Hey, my name's ShawNshawN. I am the artist behind ShawNshawN.co and I do specials on eBay. Today I'm going to cover the Gandhi murder. So this is directed by two directors, Karim Tridia and Pakja Sega. I don't know, that's probably pronounced wrong, but there's two directors, one primary and a co-director. It's quite a long film, it's 2 hours, 18 minutes, but it's a historical drama, so they have to really get into the meat of all the characters. I think that's justified in this case. Normally I like an hour and a half film, but for a historical drama, you kind of have to really dive deep, which they do in this case. You have Stephen Lang, he plays kind of the director of intelligence, Raina. You have Luke Pascaline, he's DCP Jimmy, so he's kind of the Delhi chief of police. Bazad Khan, so he's kind of the Hindu gang ringleader. And Vikas Shrivastava, he's the actual assassin. And there's another guy, I couldn't figure out from all the names, but there was another guy that was the primary and he got taken out early. So the story is how the intelligence and the police are conspiring a little bit in the chase for all these attempts on Gandhi's life, and how they're kind of involved. They make a choice whether to stop them or to allow the assassination to happen. So that's one side of the story. They cover the motives of kind of how India and Pakistan split into two different countries. So India was, for hundreds and hundreds of centuries, was one kind of monolithic region. They always have different kingdoms, but it was kind of one monolithic region. Now, when the Muslims conquered all the way through, they conquered from Saudi Arabia, the near Middle East, Persia, and then they made it partially into India. So that was kind of where Pakistan was formed. There was a majority Muslims. So when the country kind of split, all these people, they just said, screw it, I want to be in my own country. And so all the Muslims emigrated to Pakistan. People started stealing land in Pakistani from all the minorities that were Hindu or other sects, Christian, etc. And all those guys got sent back and they beat each other up. And it was really a horrible scene of national division. And in India, the Pakistani leader actually suggests, hey, you guys should have Pakistan for Muslims and Hindustan for India. Now, Gandhi took a different approach, and he wants to kind of keep the essence of India together, which before this whole big split between Pakistan and India was that all multiple religions can live together. Muslim, Hindu, all the different minority religions in India, Christians, etc. So Buddhists also, that's another big one. Anyway, he believed in this kind of multicultural. People weren't defined by their religion, they're defined by kind of where they're from in the different lands and kingdoms. So that there was more different definition. So during all this bloodletting between the two different groups, a lot of people want to get vendettas for what happened to their people. One specifically, his family, his mother and his wife are poisoned by food, so this guy feels so guilty he can save his own wife and mother, and he goes and helps the refugees, and then he gets swapped up with this really extremist Hindu religious leader, Bazad Khan. He's playing Vishnu Karkare. I'll just call him a Hindu gang leader just to make it simple. But anyway, this guy kind of ropes this guy in. It gets him all impassioned. It's like, hey, we got to do something. We got to start attacking these other people, stand up for Hindus, versus Gandhi saying, hey, we have nonviolence, nothing's going to happen. And then all these people being attacked, and these other guys in the Hindu extremists, they're like, dude, we're getting attacked. Let's go, eye for an eye, call it a day. So there's kind of the two different methodologies. People were not really satisfied. Some of the people there's definitely a big, strong minority that were definitely not satisfied with Gandhi's policies of nonviolence. Then it comes to a head when Gandhi decides to pay Pakistan like 5.5 million rupees, which is a huge sum of money, to help found Pakistan, set them out on the right. And it was just like common money that India had, and since Pakistan split off and it's a good 20-30% of India, they're like, well, here's some money to get started, here's your GoFundMe. And all these guys are like, dude, you're giving the money away, we need to fund all these refugees that were punished under the Pakistanis, that the people that formed Pakistan really had beat up all these people and stolen their land and everything, and these Hindus didn't feel any sense of justice there. So that's basically the plot line. Now, there was some really strange points in this film, I think, just because it's a Bollywood film versus a Western film. One thing is they throw in two romances for both Raina and Jimmy, and they have a dance scene in the middle. And I know Bollywood films, they always have a dance scene, a romance scene. There's kind of the wet scene, and it's very stereotypical. But dude, this is the death of Gandhi. This is your national leader. It's a serious topic. Why would you have romance in the middle of this? You might have a little bit, but it's just a little bit strange. It feels very off. You could have definitely saved like 15-20 minutes there maybe of that part of the movie. It doesn't add anything to the story. The romance has nothing to do why these guys decide either to decide to go and let Gandhi be killed. There's nothing to do with the story. So Why? Yeah, so that was some of the weird things. Another really interesting point was on the cameras, they actually use a small aperture. So generally what you see in a lot of Hollywood films, especially YouTubers, they use a wide aperture. So what a wide aperture does is you get a nice blurry background. So right now my background is a little blurry, but if I did it right, I'd have a different lens and do it like a 50mm, it'd be super blurry in the background. And you see that a lot in YouTubers, you see that a lot in Hollywood. So in Bollywood films, in this particular film, they use a small aperture so everything's in focus. So you have these scenes where you're they're showing the whole scene as everything's in focus and you have no idea what to focus on. So it's, you actually have to use visual intelligence, which is very interesting because your eye can float around to different points in the plot, but you kind of want to see particular scenes. So it's kind of a really nice establishing shot where you see a little bit of everything. There's no real part in focus and part in blurry. It's just all in focus. So it gives you kind of a different feel. Another trick about that is they do use bokeh, which is this high blur effect, in a couple of scenes. And the really important scenes where they have this back and forth dynamic where people are deciding go this way or go that way, and then they use the bokeh like in focus here, in focus there. So that has a really powerful effect because in Hollywood they way overuse it, so you really don't have that sense of like, oh, here or there. You do a little bit, but they use it so much you're just like, okay, it's just a typical way they film in Hollywood. While here, since they use it so minimally, it has a really strong impact. So that's a really cool effect of using bokeh minimally in a film. One of the things that was really strange was they covered like the Pakistan-India split a little bit. I came in, I missed the first 5 minutes. Maybe they covered this totally in the first 5 minutes or 10 minutes that I missed. So maybe I just missed that part of the film, but it just seemed like they didn't really develop a lot of the motives of these key characters that decide to work with this extremist national Hindu leader and decide to kill Gandhi. You really have to develop that motive because it's like really strong to go and be a martyr, right? And I just didn't feel like they did it justice. They did justice to one character a little bit, but not in the depth that I really wanted to see. The really interesting thing is they use some of the really police brutality. Like they use these really long sticks, which are probably like this long times 3. So these really long sticks, right? And they just beat the hell out of people. It's almost like they just like a cricket game gone bad. You're like beating the hell out of people, and they beat that shit out of people, and it's like, dude, man. And you see this even now, like the Indian police still carry these long sticks. I mean, it's better than guns where they're shooting people and killing them, right in America. So, go India, beat people up, but you leave them live. But yeah, they have these crazy sticks, and then this one guy, they just said they captured this one guy, and he tries to do an attempt, and it fails. He won't give up his friends, so they use like fire ants to go eat him alive. You're like, dude. Hella vicious, man. So yeah, there was some really cool aspects there. A lot of really cool historical power plays between Gandhi and then his second right man, Nehru, who takes over for Gandhi later. He's really, really behind Gandhi, but you can see these, these people are challenging the crowds. Like, they're kill Gandhi. He's like, who wants to kill Gandhi? He gets out of the car and approaches the crowd, which the crowd could have just went crazy, right? He approaches, is it you? Is it you? Who said that? Who said that, right? And the crowd just kind of dissipates. So it's a really interesting aspect how this leader is able to dissipate the anger, which makes you wonder whether they could have dissipated the anger of the India-Pakistan split. Probably not, but it really kind of, it's that other power dynamic where you're like, well, maybe the leaders could have just gone to all these villages and kind of slowly dissipate the anger of all these people. Maybe not, right? You would never know. I really like the dynamic of... The other really cool part was the chief of intelligence. He has all these guys lined up. He has all the... And then he's actually not going to use the information. You're like, what? They're going to allow the assassination. And so what he says, he talks to DCP Jimmy, the chief of police in Delhi, Jimmy, and he's like, hey, do you remember the assassination of Lincoln? He's like, no, what's the assassination of Lincoln, right? So he makes this analogy to the American Civil War and how all America was really torn apart. They had this Civil War, millions were killed, 3% of the population, right? And he says, India's just on the brink of a civil war right now. So if we allow the assassination of Gandhi, all that hate will dissipate there. We can capture all these groups and hit all of the hate groups really hard, knock them out of power, and it might be 10 years till this pops up again. So it's a really interesting take on the fact that if you let this one really noble guy fall, like in this case Lincoln fell, and then the anger of the Civil War kind of dissipated a little bit for a couple of years. You still had KKK came up in the 1920s, but if you look at it that way, it kind of dissipated the anger for quite a while. So what he's suggesting, you take out Gandhi, boom, but at the same time we nab all these hate groups, put them in jail, take them out of the scene, and then boom, all the kindling going into this fire is huge. And he makes the really good point that in the Civil War, the U.S. Civil War, they had 3% of the population die. And he says, in India we have 3 times the population. That would lead to like 10 million Indians dead, or allow Gandhi to be killed. You're like, whoa, man, that's some pretty deep thinking, right? You sacrifice one of your most beloved leaders to save 10 million, right? So it's like 10 million versus this idealistic leader. So it really makes you think, because then you think of like JFK assassination, other different assassinations that were really popular leaders, and you're like, maybe that was a good thing that it happened. You're like, it's a scary thought, but it's a really interesting plot twist, which I had never thought about, to make that connection between Lincoln and Gandhi. But obviously, they're big, popular leaders. I'd say Gandhi's way more popular, but Gandhi did some unpopular things, like paying off Pakistan. It's nonviolence when the people in Pakistan had, victimized all these people that got kicked out of Pakistan. They came as refugees to India, and they're sending all this money to Pakistan after they victimized all these people. And so I can see the real big anger. But at the same point, I get Gandhi's point of trying to bring the people together based on nationality, but not on religion, right? Because there's so many religions in India, it would just be a mess. It'd be all these kingdoms fighting each other. And Gandhi had the wisdom to see that long-term vision, right? So it has this really great dynamic there, I think. I just wish they had developed more of the villains, like how they were victimized, and then they come to India and they feel like they're mistreated by Indian politicians, so then they have to go after, that would be, to me, the really crystallized. Maybe I just missed that part of the film, so I'll never know unless I see the film again. So I'll definitely have to rent this film again. I would recommend this film. Give me a thumbs up if you like the review. You can subscribe below, and I'll see you in the next movie review. Thanks for watching, guys.